All right, let's dive straight in, and we are starting from Punch. G5 governors adamant set for Makinde campaign. There are indications that moves by the Akwa Ibom State Governor Emmanuel Udom to persuade the aggrieved members of the People's Democratic Party to embrace peace seem to have failed. Now, he had a meeting a few days ago with the governor of Benue State, Samuel Autumn, and the River State counterpart Inyesun Wike in Port Harcourt as part of efforts to appeal to the aggrieved governor to support the presidential candidate from the PDP, Mr. Atiku Abubakar.
So the G5, or alternatively called referred to as the Integrity Group, that's basically Governor Wiki and his merry men. Governor Autumn, Governor Makinde, Okeze Ekpeazu from Abia, and Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi of Enugu State. So basically, they set themselves up as this power block, and they are going to basically against the presidential candidate of the party, who's Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. So that's those are the origins. The origins stem from the fact that there was supposedly supposed to be shifts
Mm.
in geographical shift for the in choosing the presidential candidate, which didn't happen. Wike went against Atiku, but lost, came second in the at the primaries. And after the primaries, the G5 group led by Wike raised the fact that there was an imbalance in the party with Wike with as Atiku became coming the flag bearer and potentially the president or presidential candidate for the party,
Mm.
that the chairman of the party had to step aside and be replaced with somebody from another geographical group. That hasn't happened. Senator Yocha has not stepped aside, has refused to step aside, and has gotten back in from Atiku. Wiki and his band of merry men have taken their positions and have become a power block within the party. And obviously, for most of us who have been following Governor Wiki and his entourage around the country, and obviously for the entertainment value
Mm.
also, we've seen that what he's tried to do is basically try and create an image of the fact that he's available to be wooed by whoever wants him, that he obviously is not going to be supporting Atiku. So that's a bit of a concern within the party, because the vice presidential candidate obviously is the governor of Delta State and comes from the same region as Wiki, which puts them side by side, the South region. There are a lot of challenges within the party. Obviously, they are going against the incumbent party, so they need within the PDP they are going against the incumbent APC. So obviously, they need all their ducks in the row. Um, Various people are trying to basically, this speaks to another reconciliation attempt, which appears to have failed again. My challenge with this at the end of the day is, what is their end game? Because most of these guys are going to be out of office at the end of by May 29th. They'll be out of office. Makinde, Governor Makinde is obviously going for re-election, I
Mm.
believe. Autumn is going to the Senate, and I think I'm not sure about the other two guys where they are going to be headed to. But Wike's only chance of remaining politically relevant after 29 is either being aligned to somebody in power, or obviously, which I'm sure he's going to try and do, controlling the River State governorship by proxy, at least having his guy there. So apart from that, what after May 29, what is the end game? What are these guys going to be doing? The guys who are not going to be in one position or the other. There's, given Nigeria's political climate, they are setting themselves also up for a very interesting future. So I think all we can do as Nigerians is just watch and see and hope that everything falls into position for us as Nigerians and not for these guys, because at the moment they are more driving their own personal interests than the corporate interests of Nigerians, in my opinion.
But in some way, can are the concerns of the G5 valid with
So,
regards to the Iocha situation?
looking at Nigeria because of where we are politically, it is valid. We've not gotten to that level of maturity where we do not care about. I don't think personally that we've gotten to that point of maturity where we don't care about where whoever comes from. And a counter argument against anybody who tries to say, hey, let the best person sit in whatever role, is that Nigeria is large enough to have and has various components, and each of those components can produce someone who's good enough to sit in whatever position. So if you are looking at the best interest of the entire country, they have a point. They have a point. The party wants to be seen as being inclusive for all. So
Mm.
if they are going to take that position, then they need to take particular steps. It might not be the best for a particular individual, but for the overall party, it might be the best way forward. But at this point, I think everybody has taken their positions and taken their camps, and nobody wants to budge.
Mm. We are in January, so hopefully we'll have an idea
We'll see
of
where they're going to.
exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the next headline, and this one is coming from this day. Nigeria's agricultural sector surged by 18.33% in 3 quarters of 2022. Now, despite the incidents that have shaped the nation's agricultural sector, the food sector did witness some significant growth, which brought in fresh hope for farmers for 2023. Now, there have been issues like climate change, Russia, Ukraine, insecurity, droughts, flood, conflict, of course. But it does seem like the World Food Program is stating that the world is facing a food crisis of unprecedented proportions. And coming back to the National Bureau of Statistics telling us that the sector actually did grow. What does this mean for Nigerians?
Okay. Um, what does this mean for Nigerians? So theoretically, when we look at the numbers, it means that we're able to provide a lot more for ourselves than we were able to provide for last year or the previous year in comparison. So there's, and obviously means that we have a sector that potentially can provide a lot more, contributing to the national coffers and national growth. Agriculture is critical to whatever we're doing in this country. Obviously, the first part is that it fills our bellies. Obviously, provides for the people. Hunger, food is typically the first point of call for most people. That's where most of our increased spending have gone to as individuals, as families, in the last year, and it seems to be rising. Obviously, with inflation coming up. So theoretically, when we look at the growth in the agricultural sector, what we expect is that the food we have increased supply of this product, and obviously with increased supply, we expect in theory reduced prices. What we've not seen is obviously reduced prices. We have had increases in prices, obviously, which has contributed largely to the inflationary numbers in the country.
Mm.
And for me, that's something that we probably need to look at. I always, when we talk about agriculture, I give people the typical basic example that I see. We have a lot of waste. We still have a lot of waste. The challenge for this growth, this sectoral growth, for me is it needs to also feed into the farmers who are producing it. I'm not talking about the corporate farmers, the large size farmers,
Mm.
who they've also spoke about in this story, where some of the investments have dropped because of insecurity. But those farmers in the small villages, the small holders, how can they get more for the effort that they put in? How can they be able to generate enough revenue from this to stop their children from working on the farms and going to the big cities to go and do jobs like driving Okadas or driving keke maras now? How can they get enough to be able to pay their fees for the terms? How can they get enough to be able to pay their bills? We need to look at that. We need to be able to cascade this growth and this effort and this increase into those small farmers. And it's not impossible. It's something that if there's a deliberate attempt to look at this, it can be done. We stepped away from a lot of these things. If you go down to one of the places I visit regularly is Makodi, once in a while in Makodi, and I see most of those mills. I see a lot of the infrastructure that are decaying that have been left there. I know how much I buy a bag of yam when I go and visit my
Mm.
in-laws in Makodi, and it's I look at it at times. I'm happy because I'm spending less, but at the same time I'm thinking, with all the effort the farmer has put into this
Right.
process, how much is he really getting out of this? So we need to actually look at how do we find the balance between ensuring that the farmers get value for what they're doing, and that these products get to the tables of the people who are going to consume them at the right prices. And that's one part. The other thing that's been spoken about here clearly is insecurity. I've had at least one or two friends who have stepped out of agriculture and left the country because of threats of insecurity. And it's a big thing. A lot of small, medium scale farmers who have taken agriculture, who have taken loans, putting their life savings into the farms, have had to step away. And it's not just them. A lot of parts in the north are not. A lot of the agriculture in the north are not being told present because people have had to leave their areas
Mm.
because of the threats of security. Obviously, we have the kidnappers, we have Boko Haram. We hope that in 2023, as we like to look at the new as new starts, that there'll be a lot of more progress in sorting out some of these things. There's a story about the increased military spending somewhere down here.
Yeah.
So I hope that at some point we will make some serious progress with some of these items, and we keep on that journey to make these things better. So that's why I see it. But yes, we can give ourselves a round of applause and say, hey, the sector has grown.
What would it take to actually achieve food security?
Hmm. One of the things I think would be out and out. I think this is the bane of a lot of things in Nigeria: deliberate planning. How much do we need? How much are we? Who are we catering for? What do we actually need? There's an oversimplification of Nigerian problems by politicians. When there's one of the candidates who talks about Agbado, this, that, and we all laugh and think it is joke, but it's for me it's a basic simplification of the problem, saying that if I can provide all of this, Nigerians will be okay. We'll have seafood security. The same thing the current regime has talked about pushing things like rice and all that. They've grown the rice, they set up those pyramids to give us. It oversimplifies the problem. For us to be able to produce, you need to ensure that the guys at the bottom of the pyramid who are actually investing into this are able to get value out of it, and they feel safe enough to do it. So you can't separate agriculture from every other thing that's happening now. At the moment, the Russia-Ukraine thing provided it has in its negativity has also provided some opportunity for some of the Nigerian agricultural people in the sector being able to provide some of those things that are close, either substitutes for what is being provided from Russia or Ukraine, or things that we can consume locally. But are we able to take advantage of that opportunity? Same thing with what we have with oil, with our oil. We've not been able to exploit it, and those are because we have structural problems and structural issues that we need to sort out. So for food security, we need to sort out security. We need to make sure the farmers are happy. We need to ensure that there's funding coming in. And but to start with, we need to know what exactly are we looking at. We need to know our numbers from our population down to what we should be growing and what we should be looking at. There should be a deliberate effort. It's not just at times we look as we are always all around the place, throwing scarce resources at many things that are not going anywhere.
All right. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Would love to read your comments. You can send them through via WhatsApp. The number is 0809 4440981. And of course, you could tweet at Smooth981. We're taking a quick break and we'll continue the conversation right here on the other side.
Hey, what's going on, people? This is Uzi Quenda. You are now listening to
Sorry?
No.
Okay.
Let's get out my ears.
Okay. When we kiss.
Music, life, Smooth 98.1. Luxury music.
Smooth 98.1.
This is the Smooth Breakfast Show.
Just the two of us.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. It's Zibby here, and I've got Chibuzor, my analyst for today, and we're looking at the stories from the news headlines here in Nigeria. Now, just before we took a quick break, we spoke about the agricultural sector and its reported 18.33% growth. Let's move on to The Guardian. INEC threatens underage voters, parents with arrest, says balloting by proxy eliminated. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission is warning that underage voters who actually attempt to vote during this year's general elections, not just them, but also their parents, are to be arrested. The commission also declared that politicians buying PVCs and harvesting voter identification numbers in a bid to rig the polls would fail. This was stated by Festus Okoye, who is the National Commissioner and Chairman of the Information and Voter Education Committee. Now, he said the action of those purchasing PVCs would only oppress voters as well as preventing them from exercising their rights on D-Day or Election Day.
So, Mr. Festus Okoye has made valid points about the impact of underage voting and obviously people trying to buy voters' cards off genuine or validated voters. I think one of the things I would first have a bit of I had a bit of a smile when I saw the title was that they were threatening both the underage voters and their parents. Now, obviously, I'm no lawyer, but unless there's a criminal conspiracy of some sort, that's where you can tie up the parents to, what the underage voter is doing. But that's a different story because we know, for instance, in some part of the country where we have a huge chunk of these young guys walking up and down the streets without any parental control or governance, or how are they going to even get the parents? So that's a different story for another. But I think we need to focus on what the issues are. For them to have gotten for us to be talking about underage voters, it means that we've had underage people registering to be voters. So we are not, what the challenge is that we're not trying to root out the problem at source. We are trying to root it out at the final stage of it. And it's something I've spoken to about previously, and about the lack of data in Nigeria. We're in 2023 now. There is really no reason why, when we look at someone who's underage, you're saying someone who's below 18. There is really no reason why somebody who was born in, say, 2005 does not have a birth certificate in Nigeria today. That birth certificate should also feed into whatever documentation is getting to. So we've gotten to our name now, or whatever it is. We need to, it's critical for a country like Nigeria. We need to have that data, and it's not just individual chunks of data sitting in individual databases, but something that feeds into a system. Everybody who gets one has a birth certificate. There's a process to get these things. Local governments exist, offices exist. I have gone through that process before. It's so simplistic, but why we choose not to do it is the problem. Is one of the challenges I have. So when you talk about going to go and arrest people, or stopping underage voters on the election day, for me it's a bit of a challenge. If that person has gotten through the process of even registering in the first place, right, how was he able to do it? Who allowed him to be able to submit his details and say, hey, you look like you are 18 and above and you can register? So that's one of the challenges, that we need to sort out the problems from its roots instead of looking at when it has finally manifested. Now, apart from that, you look at every other thing he's mentioned. Obviously, I'm sure he's just trying to give the parents some additional responsibility for those who have any parental guidance, to make sure that their words are not found in those instances. But the applicability of what he stated out is very challenging. But in reality, what we need to look at is what exactly he's speaking to, the problems around voting. He's talked about beavers and how the system would actually prevent them from even actually being able to vote if you don't have the right details for those who are buying up cards. So I think more or less this is a public service announcement to people. Let's do the right thing. Let's hold on and hope and go out and express express our thoughts the right way, the genuine way on the election day. Let's vote for whoever wants to vote, and let's do what we need to do. Let's do it properly, and let's not stop trying to beat the system.
Now, speaking about voting and underage voters, some countries actually have people as young as 16 being eligible to vote. I was reading something about a situation in Germany where 16-year-olds can now actually take part in the European elections. And I'm just curious about this. Of course, it'll have to pass through a whole process. But do you think perhaps maybe 18 could be reduced? Maybe 16?
So one of the challenges for me is, as in Nigeria, 16, 18, even in places like the United States, for instance, you have various ages across states. So I think it's something that we just need to ask ourselves the questions in Nigeria. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's a burning question for even our Senate. We have 44 bills that are hanging around from last year that are still going through the houses. When he talks about, one of the things that we've seen, especially in the European Commission, where a lot of them have had the European Parliament, where you have people as young as 16, and even local houses in countries, especially some of the Nordic countries, who are very, they're very progressive when it comes to the things like that. What you have is a system where people understand the value of what democracy is. They understand it's not just power for the sake of having power, but power for making changes. They understand that things like the local government, or your city councils, or your streets, or your whatever is in your neighborhood, that the impact that you can make as an elected official or as a change, and they look at very things that appeal to the people. What we have here today is a system that is built upon money, influence, and money. So you see governors who have left, the executive office, they want to fall back into the Senate.
Right.
You see guys who are targeting, long time their target is to get into governorship or whatever, or senator. They start at local government. For them, it's just like being promoted in secondary school or primary school. It's just a progressive run into something bigger. It's not about service or serving the people that you are mandated to or you've come out to be elected for. So until we start changing those things, that's when you now start seeing changes in voting patterns even in the house to allow some of these laws to pass through to make it easier for younger people to actually aspire to those offices. And until a lot of the younger people start understanding that they are not just tools, but with the numbers and the capacity that they have, they can actually take over this position. Because guess what? If you can take down the ages of a local government council for someone to run as local government chairman to say 24 and 20, the, the probability of someone of that age actually winning is very high because we have a very young population. But we also need to be very deliberate about it. How do we teach some of these young people about the value of a democracy? What are their roles in it? What are their responsibilities in this system? It's lacking. Today, there's a gross misunderstanding of what the system is. That's why you see people talking in corners about how it's not working and how previous systems have worked better, or going back to the 60s or going back to maybe the 80s, because people don't understand how the system can be put to effect in the most optimal way.
All right, moving on to Punch. National Assembly considers bills for 48 new varsities. An analysis of bills proposed by the Senate and the House of Representatives for 2022 have revealed that about 48 bills were initiated for the establishment of new universities across the country. Now, some of the bills were proposed at the height of the strike by ASU, which lasted from the 14th of February up until October 2022. One of the concerns raised by the union was the proliferation of universities. Now, according to ASU, there was no need for the establishment of new universities if the government could not take care of the existing ones. Now, currently, there are 50 federal universities, 59 state-owned universities, and about 111 private universities.
Okay, I was tearing up my hair when I saw this story. One of the things that got me a bit miffed was there's a comment by the executive secretary of the National Universities Commission. That's I think it's Professor Abubakar, when he talks about the fact that Nigeria did not have enough universities to accommodate for the number of candidates seeking admission. And for me, in theory, if you say that, hey, we have 200 million people, over 200 million people, and we're, if give or take, about 60%, 60, 70% of them are youths, and if we cascade those numbers down to those who are seeking admission, we might be able to come to that conclusion that we don't have enough spaces for people who want to going to get to universities. But my challenge, and it has always been that, is that we set up universities as just a final stage in the education process. We've not been able to exploit the university system for what it should be to start with, and that's why we have a lot of people who are on that conveyor belt going to looking at the universities. Because today in Nigeria in 2023, because I'm going to keep saying 2023, today in Nigeria, what for your typical person, your typical young person or typical family, university education is the only way you're going to get a good job to cater for your family. That and politics, for instance. Otherwise, the way to provide for your family, provide, get a source of income, be able to generate anything, and that shouldn't be the case. So what you have is even people who are not interested in going to university, wanting to go into university. I have a bag full of tales about people who have gone to university and basically from last time they studied anything was secondary school and just found a way to work the system so that they could graduate and get their certificates, because that was the only goal. You have people going to university, there's no learning for some of them. And I'm not talking about the inability of the universities to cater for them, but the fact that even the motivation for the individual to go to university is off to start with. And we need to change that, because one of the reasons why that is happening, because apart from your economic structure in the society, your secondary school system isn't doing enough to give people with the skills that they need at that level to be able to seek for other routes,
Right.
other technical learning, or even doing some small businesses or whatever they want to do. Then university can come back as something, hey, I've gotten to the point in my life where I think I need to get these new skills, I want to go back to university. That's one thing. The second sad thing about it is that these bills came out in the middle of an ASU strike. What is the crux of the ASU strike? The inability of the government to be able to properly fund the universities. Now, with 48 new universities, has that changed or will that change? The truth is that we are stuck with 50 federal universities today because handing out universities became a political gift or tool. Whenever you went to go and visit, a president went to go and visit any state that did not have a federal university, the people of that state would come out and say, hey, give us our university so our indigents can go to university. And that was linked back to the thing of things like catchment area. So I recall when I was serving in Taraba many, many years ago, Taraba State did not have a federal university. A lot of the people were going to Abuja, they were going to Abuja, Jos, University of Jos and all that. But there was a big clamor. And I'm not saying that because Taraba didn't have people that were qualified to go to university, but the major clamor was political. And my challenge with some of the political clamors is that what you see is a watering down of standards to be able to allow indigents of particular areas get into universities just because that university is situated in their area. So we need to sort out the fact. I don't see how the government is going to fund 48 additional universities. Somebody needs to come out with a clear plan on how the government is going to be able to fund them. Even the existing universities already have issues with funding. So before you go and create more problems, give us a solution, give us a roadmap. If not, just kill the idea there. Let's sort out the problems now, and we can now start looking at that in the future. Any state that wants a university should come up with a funding plan. That for me is key. But we also need to start this system that means that everybody and anybody who doesn't want to go to must go into university to give themselves a future. That needs to happen in this country at some point.
All right. So if the government can't afford to run the universities that are currently in existence, can the government, I mean, this is the executive secretary from the Universities Commission saying there are not enough universities. Can the government afford to not establish more universities, considering that for so many people, that is, just like you said, the only way that they see out of their situation? So when you have young people who are unemployed, have no skills and no education, what will that be for Nigeria generally?
So it's like what you described is basically a catch-22. There is, in theory, a need for more universities. On the other hand, the government can't even afford to fund the current universities adequately. So obviously, that's what we'll be left with, a situation where even the quality of education coming out of those systems compared to some of the better private universities is actually a bit of a challenge. You look at some of the universities who are doing big things for a lot of their students, who seem to be in the news. And look at some of the federal universities and see, you compare them and you're like, what's the basis? Somebody spending 7 years in a federal university for a 4-year course, where someone who he was probably better than at secondary school level has come out after 3 years, has worked for 4 years, and he's still in the system. So we need to ask ourselves, what do we want? What I would say for a lot of federal universities is that the existing universities that you might probably, we need, obviously, technology has been good to us. We need also to be able to exploit technology. I'm surprised at the number of people I know who have gone through Noun, for instance. I wasn't one of the biggest fans of Noun, the National Open University, when it started. But I know a couple of people who have actually gone to, and people who are actually working and have built a career, have gone back to go and do courses in Noun. And I think that maybe that's the model. Some of the universities, I know one or two of them have actually stayed doing it. I've looked at how can we provide alternative means of education, like online courses. Specific courses can be made online, and that's what a lot of the universities still need to look at. But for that to even to happen, there needs to be some investment into IT and the technology, and think about how do we deliver our content over this medium.
All right, take a few messages really quickly. Dami says, the problem of Nigeria is leadership. Everything is connected. Solving the larger problems of Nigeria, like policy, stability, infrastructure, deficit, insecurity, will feed into the agricultural sector. Ken says, good morning all. You want to arrest underage voters that you registered. What a way to acknowledge avoidable anomalies. Good luck with arresting parents of children. And Gary Newton says, instead of new universities, why not use this money to fund the existing ones? And thank you so much, Chibuzor.
Thank you, Zibby.
That's it for Freshly Pressed this morning. Do stay with us. Smooth Breakfast continues.
The headlines.
So I feel to catch your hand cues earlier.
Oh, it's all right.
In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a brilliant day.
I will try.
All right. Bye.
This is Odunsi the engineer.